Hey everybody, welcome to the next model build on Model Building Start to Finish. This is John and sitting here with Dan, and this is something a little different. As you know from the product review you saw last week of this kit, you know that we're doing a building this time. And Dan, you had some special ideas for this one, didn't you?
Yeah, well, this is our first structure build on Model Building Start to Finish, as opposed to something that moves. So I'm basically going to build the kit straight out of the box, but I do want to do a couple things. One, I want to paint it. And also I bought some detail parts so that I can dress it up a little bit. And I want to add a few lights.
Oh, sounds like fun.
Yeah, I think it should be pretty good. So when you open the box, there's an instruction sheet which has some history of feed mills in general. I don't think that this particular building follows any specific prototype as far as I know. Doesn't say that in here anywhere.
Seems like they would mention that, wouldn't they?
I would imagine that, yeah, that they would probably mention it if it did. But anyway, it seems pretty typical of a lot of rural buildings.
Yep.
And then there's 3 actual pages of instructions, so it seems pretty straightforward. This is page 1, and then there's page 2 and 3 on the back. And now they recommend to build the walls first as sub-assemblies and then put them together. And one of the reasons for that is when you build this kit, they say that you can put the walls together as snap-together parts.
Uh-huh.
That's in case you want to take the building apart to store it in a more flat way.
Oh, right. You mentioned that on the review, huh?
Right. I don't think I'm going to do that because if I put lighting and everything in it, it's going to be impractical to take it apart. So I'm just going to build it and glue it all together and have it just be one building. I may leave the roof detachable just so you can get inside, which is sometimes a good idea with structures. So the kit comes with a set of decals. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to use these, but you can if you want to.
Okay.
So there are a bunch of parts trees in the box. This is the wall set, which has all of the wall pieces, and they're molded in kind of an off-white color. Some of the other pieces are molded in other colors, so you could, if you wanted to, you could assemble the building without painting it.
That would look cheesy though, huh?
Yeah, it would look like, to me, that always just looks like plastic, so I'm going to paint it. What can I say? It's me. So those are the walls.
Wow, that's a lot of extra crap, Dan.
Yeah, I bought some detail parts. These ones that aren't in a package are from Wiseman Model Services. So I got some garbage cans, some brooms, pallets, electrical boxes, and some feed bags. And then from Scale City Designs, I have some 55-gallon barrels, a couple of fire extinguishers, a vending machine, and some light covers.
They almost look like hubcaps, and I'm thinking to myself, this isn't a car.
No, this is like those industrial lights, you know. That
yeah, they usually have little pipes that hold them up, right?
Right. So I thought I might put a couple of those maybe above the doors or something on the building.
With LEDs, huh?
Of course, yeah. I'm not necessarily going to use everything here, but I want to use some of this to just add a little bit of character to the building.
Yep.
These are the roof pieces, which are in a kind of a dark gray color.
Kind of a slate, huh?
Yeah. And there's some clear window glazing.
Yep.
And then this has window pieces and some trim parts. Also includes a chimney and some bracing.
Some kind of doors, huh?
Door, yeah. And some other, these freight doors. I think they're supposed to slide. In fact, I think you can make them operable if you want to.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. And then last, there's this piece, which is the kit base. And I guess this little square is probably the cap to the smokestack. Or
chimney. To the chimney? Yeah.
Chimney, yeah. So unlike when you build a SD40-2, for example, where you usually paint it toward the end, doing a structure, a lot of times you paint it first, then put it together.
But that's sort of counterintuitive, considering what we've done so far in this series.
Right. Well, part of the reason is that for most structures, you don't end up with seams and things because they usually, if the kit is designed well, most of the time they put the seam where there would be a seam anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to do a lot of that filling kind of thing that you would normally do with
right, with the putty.
With putty, and yeah,
the putty you're not supposed to smoke.
Right. Now you could paint like this whole thing, like if you were going to use an airbrush, which I probably will. you could just take this whole thing as a unit and paint it.
Uh-huh.
But I don't want to do that because then when I cut the pieces off, there are going to be little places where there isn't any paint.
Oh, right.
So I'd rather cut the pieces out first and then, clean them up with a file and a knife and then paint it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start with my sprue cutters. And these are pretty thick pieces, so I don't have to be as careful as I do like with those little delicate underpinnings of that boxcar that we built. So I can just kind of go around and just cut the pieces off.
You build these enough, you get repetitive use injuries.
Probably. So the sprue cutters actually did a pretty good job of cutting this off flush, so there isn't a lot of cleanup to be done.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from here, and it looks pretty flat.
Yeah, in fact, I probably could just leave it alone, but just for some added insurance, I'm going to take a flat file and just go over it a little bit. Another way you could clean up the edges of something like this is pretend that this is sandpaper.
Oh, the surface of the table sandpaper, yeah.
Since this is flat, you can just put the thing down there and sand it like this.
Yeah, see, that's what I'd be inclined to do.
Yeah, I don't have any sandpaper with me right at this moment as we're filming this, so I can't do that, but that's how you would do it, and it would give you the same result. Some of these pieces on the corners have a little ridge running down the edge.
Yeah, it's really hard to see that, but it is there.
Yeah, and since this is going to actually be exposed, because this is an outside corner, I want to file that off.
Oh, I see what you're doing, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to file this until that's completely gone.
This is where that sandpaper trick really would come in handy, huh?
It would. Fortunately, this kit doesn't have too much flash, but it does have some of these little stringy things.
It's a boring kit, Dan. There's not a lot of flash going on.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Lack of flash is a good thing, at least on this
on
the
models,
wall,
right?
Yeah, on the wall pieces anyway. But it does have these little bits of stringy plastic in some of the window openings, so you can just file those off too.
So really all you're doing is you're just going around the thing and making sure all the edges are the way they're supposed to be, right?
Right, and just cleaning everything up so that there's not little bits of stuff you don't want there. So sometimes when sanding or filing an edge, you end up with a kind of a little bit of roughness on the actual corner.
Uh-huh.
So you can use an X-Acto knife and just hold it perpendicular to the surface and just kind of scrape along that way.
Kind of shaving it, or?
Yeah, it kind of just shaves off any little fuzz or whatever that, sometimes happens with plastic, and just another way to help clean up the part. So I finished all the wall pieces, and now I'm moving on to the roof pieces. And basically I'm just going to keep cutting out parts until I've got all the parts that I want to cut out. There is a slight difference with these gray pieces in that they're angled a little on the edges.
Okay.
So when filing them, I have to file them at an angle to match the angle of the part.
Oh, right. Or also if you're using sandpaper, you have to angle it that way.
Right. So instead of just like filing it this way.
Okay, well, I guess just keep working and we'll come back if something interesting happens.
Okay.
Because there's not really a lot to show with filing and cutting and
not too
cleaning.
much. Yeah.
Right. So as promised, it's a couple hours later.
Yeah. Well, I got most of the parts cut out that I can cut out for the moment. And I wouldn't always recommend doing this with a kit to just cut out everything.
Uh-huh.
But
it's a lot of stuff on the table, Dan.
It is. But there's only two different sizes of windows, so they're pretty easy to keep track of. Also, a lot of the parts like this one have a number on the back.
I remember that from my model building cars and planes days.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did do some things like this, because these little supports here have little pins on the top that'll never be seen because there's a roof that goes over that. I left them attached on that side because it makes a convenient painting handle.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, pretty much what I need to do is to take all this stuff and wash it and then paint it. I do want to assemble one thing, though, before I do that. So these are the pieces of the chimney, and I have them laid out according to how they're supposed to go together in the instructions.
Yeah.
Because there's part numbers on the back.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at the drawings. So they just fit together corner to corner.
Are you supposed to glue this or what?
Well, I am going to glue it, yeah. But I figured I'd snap it together first and see how it fits. See if I need to make any adjustments.
Oh, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, it seems to fit pretty well. So now I can just use some liquid styrene cement on it.
And, people are going to wonder what this is.
This is the same stuff from Micromark. I used to use Ambroid, but I don't think they make that anymore.
Wasn't there another Tanax or something?
Tanax, and I don't think they make that anymore either, for some reason. But you can still get this glue from Micromark. So,
doesn't Micromark make models too, or parts or something?
They make a lot of tool. Well, they I don't know if they so much make stuff as resell stuff. I guess they have a few things that are their own brands. But yeah, they have a little of everything: tools and trains and model kits and model ships and all kinds of stuff.
It looks like some kind of a strange cigar.
Well, this is the Chimney. I finished assembling it, and I ended up putting the top cap on also because it's a really tight fit, and I was afraid that if I waited till after it was painted, it would be even harder to get on there.
Oh, yeah.
So even though it'll make my life a little harder if I want to paint this a different color, I decided to just glue it on now.
Well, do you want to paint it a different color?
Well, probably because this is brick and this would probably be like concrete or something.
Cement.
Yeah. So it probably will end up looking a little different, but that's a relatively easy thing to mask too. The next step is to wash all of the parts. I like to use glass cleaner and then rinse them in the sink. And I wear gloves when I'm doing this because the glass cleaner sometimes irritates my skin.
Probably ammonia, huh?
Yeah, maybe. But it works pretty well. You could also use dish soap if you wanted to. The main thing is just to wash them to get rid of any finger oil and also any chemicals that might be left over from the molding process.
If you use dish soap, you could have a lemony fresh scent.
Yeah, you could. You just want to make sure to use something that's going to rinse off completely, because you don't want to have soap residue on the parts either.
Oh, right. That could affect the paint, couldn't it?
Yeah. So the idea is to get everything down to bare plastic.
Yeah. You're just air drying? Is that putting on a towel?
Yeah. I just let the parts air dry. Overnight is preferable to make sure that they're really dry. And I just do every part until I'm done.
So you don't want to use a heat gun to dry it?
Well, you can, but you want to make sure you don't melt anything. Small parts sometimes can melt if you get them too hot.
I was joking. I would never use a heat gun to dry plastic.
You can use a hairdryer.
Yeah.
I keep a hairdryer around for that purpose. Now that the parts are dry, I'm spraying them with some Tamiya fine surface primer in white. And I'm just making sure I get all the edges and all the angles.
Now, why are you using a spray can instead of using an airbrush?
Actually, the Tamiya primer works really well, and it comes out with a really smooth surface, almost as if you'd airbrushed it, and it's just easier. So it's really important to have a good solid primer coat if you're going to paint light colors. For dark colors, it doesn't have to be quite as good. I still like to use primer, but if I'm going to paint this part black, like I probably will later, I don't need to worry about it too much. I'm also painting all of the small parts.
That little sprue comes in handy, just like you predicted.
Yeah, sometimes with small parts, it's good to have something to hold them with. For a lot of the small parts that only need to be painted on one side, I put them on some tape and then tape the strips of tape to a piece of mat board so I could have something to hold. And with the windows and things, it's important to hit them from multiple angles so that you make sure that the primer covers evenly.
This is like a gigantic sprue, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Oh, it's nice to see some color going on.
Yeah. Now that the primer's had a chance to dry, I can go ahead and start applying the color. I'm using Tamiya TS3 dark yellow in a spray can. And the reason I'm using a spray can is, one, this is a big building and there's a lot of paint to spray. And two, since it's freelanced, it doesn't really matter what color it is. It's kind of whatever I wanted. So I just picked something that looked plausible.
It almost reminds me of a SP Depot or something.
Yeah, it's not quite the right yellow, but it kind of has that look.
Especially if the windows end up brown.
Yeah. I'm spraying the base with Testor's 1233 Flatlight Aircraft Gray. I think it's a fairly good concrete looking color.
This goes under the building, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to use this same color on the chimney. So I did select brown as my trim color. This is Tamiya TS1 Red Brown. And what I'm doing right now is spray painting the underside of the roof with this color so that the eaves will match the rest of the trim. And I didn't actually prime it under here too much, but it'll look okay.
Well, most of it's not even going to show up, right?
Right. It's just so it doesn't look funny if you look at the building from the bottom. I'm using the same color on all the trim pieces.
Oh, the giant sprue again.
Yeah. So this, just again, going over it from all angles to make sure I get complete coverage.
Yeah, that putting it on the board like that, it's really handy.
Yeah, it works pretty well.
I can imagine if all these pieces were separate and you're trying to hold it or do it with tweezers or something, that would suck.
Yeah, it would be a pain. And the sprue comes in handy for holding it when you're spraying color as well.
Yeah.
So pieces like this, again, you just want to make sure they're covered from all sides. On the top of the roof, I'm using Testor's 1249 flat black. And as you can see, I'm not masking it, even though I sprayed the underside brown. I'm just spraying it from the top. If there's a little bit of overspray that creeps underneath, I'm not too worried about it.
It might even just look like dirt weathering or something.
Right.
Yeah, because eaves get filthy. I remember as a house painter, we used to have to clean the eaves.
Now that the parts have had a chance to dry for a while, I decided to use a second coat of yellow on the yellow parts.
It'll look a lot better.
Yeah. Yellow's an especially hard color to get to cover well.
Yeah, I've seen that on other models.
The Tamiya paints I used dried with a slight sheen, so I'm using some Tamiya TS80 flat clear over them to dull them down. You could also use dull coat, it would accomplish the same thing.
This is so the weathering will stick?
Yeah, and just to make sure that it has a nice matte finish. So I think that's a good place to stop for this episode. All the parts are painted, and next time we can pick it up with assembly.
Oh, ready to put it together already.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess we'll catch everybody next time.
See ya.